a steady diet of government cheese and living in a van down by the river.
Live from the basement of the YouTube headquarters, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and let's get your money factory cranking. What did we learn from the automobile that applies to your money? Automation. Today, we're sharing what to automate, what to put on hold, and where the biggest ROI gains can be with your money if you nail this. But that's not all. Today, our panel will try and regroup to ensure that OG doesn't run away with our year-long trivia challenge. Then now, a guy who's here to help you parse the trivial from the important parts of financial planning. It's Joe Saul-Sehy.
Hey, everybody, and happy Friday to you. We're super happy you're here to talk automation with us. And the people that are with us are not automated. They're animated, but not automated. Starting with a woman who's coming to us not from Manhattan, but I believe from her old bedroom in Georgia. Paula Pant is here.
I am here. I'm automatically smiling by virtue of being in your presence.
Oh, yes.
So, you know, every day is a good day that I'm on the Stacking Benjamins podcast.
That is fabulous. You just wanted to have a sofa in your background too, like me, didn't you?
Yeah, you know, it's nice. So I'm sitting on the floor in front of the sofa, which is technically not how sofas are supposed to be used. But I've discovered that the sofa makes for a really nice background, a good depth of field, a nice bright pop of color. So, yeah.
Do you got your legs folded like your third grade camp?
Oh, I could. All right, now I do. There we go.
Perfect.
There we go.
Yes. And the guy who always loves being in third grade camp. I don't know. That's so bad. Jesse Cramer for the Best Interest Podcast is here. How are you, man?
That is pretty bad. I was going to make a joke and say like, the whole like leg crossing thing. I don't bend that way personally. Yeah, after that, Joe, I don't know. I might have to rescind my participation in this podcast. You know,
he's like a kid. Did you go to? We didn't have third grade camp. We had fourth grade camp.
I grew up really rural, and so like the idea of going away to camp was just like I live in the woods. Like, why do I need to go to camp? So yeah, I never went to.
Yeah, we can camp right out behind the house.
I went to a baseball camp once because I played baseball growing up. So it was at one of the local colleges in Syracuse. And, you spend like 3 days there doing drills and you sleep overnight in the dorms. That's the closest I ever got to camp.
Was it fun?
It was. I remember that was the first time where I remember thinking, whoa, there are a lot of really good baseball players my age. And I was from a really small pond. And I actually grew up, the place where I grew up was kind of like living in a pond. As I said, it was pretty rural. But yeah, it was an eye-opening experience at how big and talented the world is.
It always made me laugh, Jesse, when I would talk to parents and like, oh, my kid's 7. He's a phenomenal swimmer. Like he's going to like win the Olympics or something.
Right.
Like your kid hasn't even hit puberty yet. You have no idea what's going to happen. Everything's going to change.
That's code for my son hasn't drowned yet. So he's a phenomenal swimmer. Right.
That was coded our family. Actually, that's the reason why our family did do swimming was they were failing out of YMCA swim camp. And one of our friends said that for her kids, she's like, I just had to join the swim team for 1 year. I didn't care how they did. I just wanted to join the swim team and they learned how to swim fast. And it was great. I'd recommend swim team for everybody, at least one time. And the guy who's going to swim through this topic of automation is here. Doc G, Jordan Grumet joins us. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. You know, my mom used to automate childcare in the summer. She'd send us all to sleepaway camp and just get rid of us. So that was the best automation. I don't know if I can top that.
So you went to camp all the time. Like you're the opposite of Jesse.
We did sleepaway. So we did, day camps when we were little. And then when we got old enough, we all did sleepaway camp. So I'd be a month or two away from home.
I definitely don't want you guys to sleep on this topic because I've been on record as saying that this topic is really, for me, the number one way to get ahead with your money is to automate, make saving easy. And if you nail this, if you get this right, man, the rest of it just goes so much easier. If you're brand new to our Friday episodes, I want to welcome you especially because what we do with our team of contributors, we take a topic of the news, we discuss it. I will tell you this, our Friday shows are never super hard hitting. It's much more like sitting around with a group of friends and you're at lunch and they're super smart with money. So you can be too. Something we always do each week too is thank our sponsors right at the top of the show. We've got a couple here that make sure this is free and we can keep on keeping on. So we're going to hear from them. And then these brilliant people are going to help you get better at automating your money. This idea of automating your money. I said, Paula, in my intro that I thought this was the number one reason, the number one thing to do to get ahead. But let's really expand on why. Why should we care about making sure we nail automation?
Frankly, it's because we're all busy. There are a million things that we have to do, and there are certain tasks in our life that simply can't be automated, like doing the laundry, right? So our cognitive capacity is limited. We're juggling a million different things every day. We're going to work. We're making food. We're trying to maintain our lives. And it's so easy for financial tasks to slip through the cracks. Even bill paying, which incurs penalties, it's easy for that with something relatively short term with a penalty. It's easy to forget to do that. So you can imagine how much easier it is to forget to do the things that don't have penalties and that are long-term, like investing.
Yeah, Jesse, back when I was a financial planner, to Paula's point, I had a client who made the equivalent today of about $500,000 a year. This is back in the late 90s. And she had a horrible credit because she kept forgetting to pay her bills. I mean, she was just so busy with her career at the television station that all the other stuff went in the trash. Why else should we care about automation besides that?
The one thing that came to mind for me is that automation allows you to make sure that you're doing all the important stuff. And I guess what I'm saying is that, if you don't automate, a lot of times it's going to be like the squeakiest wheel is going to get your grease. And just like Paula said, a lot of times that squeakiest wheel is going to be like, oh, shoot, I just got a letter in the mail from the utility company that I'm late. Or like, oh, shoot, I just realized I'm a couple days late on my mortgage payment. And so you're going to do things like you're going to make sure you pay your bills. But the things you're going to forget is like, oh, right. I didn't max out my Roth IRA contribution last year, and I have till the tax deadline to do that. But that is just going to completely go past your mind if you don't automate it. So to me, automation, right? It's that, we can come back to this term later, but the idea of decision fatigue and you can just opt to make one decision one time, which is to set up an automation, and then save yourself from ever having to make a hard decision or any decision again.
Yeah, I mean, decision fatigue is exactly what I was thinking. And so put aside the ease that we just talked about, because that's really, really true, but you guys already mentioned it. When it comes to making money decisions, they're deeply emotional. Like, do I max out the 401k? Do I put money in the Roth IRA? Do I put money aside for junior's college? All of these are really big decisions. And if you find yourself having to make them every month, it's just painful. So I love this idea of kind of making the decision once and then letting automation take over so you don't have to keep on relitigating the case. And I think that's really important. Like, if you can automate some simple stuff like, this is my fun account, this is the college account, this is my 401k account, and all that gets automated, you don't have to keep on making those decisions about how much and when.
Yeah, I love this idea of opening yourself up to focus on what's important versus what's urgent, Jesse. I mean, completely to your point, like we get caught in these urgent forest fires all day if we don't automate regardless, right? Regardless, to some degree, part of our day changes as the day goes on based on outside stimuli. And if I haven't automated the super important stuff, well, then I'm going to run into a bunch of trouble. I think that's huge.
I think this is a weird analogy to make, but if you follow me, I hope it makes sense, which is if you're the kind of person who is chronically late, that even when there's something like, oh, I have a hair appointment and I'm running 15 minutes late and I'm super stressed.
This happens to Jordan and I all the time.
Always.
Sorry,
always.
I picked on the wrong topic. But you'll be super stressed because you're like, I'm late and the barber's going to be frustrated at me. And it's adding in this level of stress to your life that doesn't need to be there at all. Right. If you are in this particular case, if maybe you were able to keep track of your time a little better, or I don't have to go down that rabbit hole. I know there are various reasons why people are late, but the corollary is that by not automating, you are just simply introducing a certain level of stress in your life that we have solutions for. It's called automation. And it's completely avoidable. And I just think it's going to lead to, on net, it just has to lead to better outcomes for people.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of stake here, Paula. If we don't automate, we just get caught up in this grime of what do I have to do today?
Yeah, exactly. The more that you can just set it and forget it, the less friction there is, right? And the more that frees up your time and energy to focus on other things. So you can focus on elements of your financial life that are not automatable, such as decision making. You can focus on, you can just focus on your family life or having fun with your friends and the people around you. You know, that you can do literally anything else with that time. Like, why would you not? You know, what reason is there not to?
And you know what's cool, Paula, on something that goes along really, I think, with the focus, even with your podcast, and you think about your thinking, and I learned this at Strategic Coach, which is that you're really good at one thing. Like you have a thing that you're super good at that maybe a smaller percentage of the world is really good at. And the biggest problem most of us have is we don't spend enough time on that unique talent.
Right.
So one thing that I love about automation is, listen, if I'm not great at it, automate it versus, a lot of us spend a ton of time trying to make up for the things that we're not good at by turning that 2 into a good solid 5 on a scale of 1 to 10 versus making the 9 a 10. I think there's a huge benefit there to just focusing on that one thing.
Right, exactly. Well, you were talking earlier about summer camps and being on the swim team and whatever. Like if you're an amazing swimmer, don't try to play tennis. And if you're an amazing tennis player, don't try to be a runner. I mean, you can do those things every now and again for fun, but you're only going to excel at very few things. I'm just echoing what you said. The more that we can lean into the really unique value that we bring, the unique talents that keep us in for which we are the top percentile, but the more value that brings not only to our lives, but to the lives of everyone around us.
Absolutely. We don't think about that, man, if we can make an impact on other people, it's going to be with that thing. I want to go, Jesse, to your, I love what you said earlier. I've kind of a weird analogy. I'm like, Jesse Cramer with a weird analogy?
No way.
That doesn't happen. But I want to dive into that engineering brain of yours, because, when we're automating stuff, what we should all be doing is thinking in terms of ROI. Like there's 50 million things that I could choose to try to automate. How do I begin calculating what the biggest ROI is going to be so I can kind of rank? This is the first thing I should automate, second, third, fourth, and this is something I shouldn't automate, which, by the way, I want to get into that even separately later. What shouldn't we automate? But for now, how do I calculate ROI?
I have 2 answers to this question. And at first I was going to say, well, you can think about the things that you do most often. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad answer, but I actually think the better answer is I'm channeling Charlie Munger and his famous principle of inversion. And I think the way we can think of this potentially, and this is the engineer in me, is what's the thing that's going to lead to the most catastrophic failure, right? Or if I wanted to implode my life, financial or otherwise, what are the things that I would forget to do? And those can be the things where you might want to first think about automating.
Wow, you take like a real risk management approach.
100%. Yeah. And I think that is. I don't know if it's the engineer, if it's where I was raised, if it's my investing approach or what, but I do very much take a risk management approach. And I think about the idea of, what is the worst that could happen? And let me try to Band-Aid that first. I mean, do you know this famous story? Can I tell a 1-minute anecdote about Charlie Munger?
I think you have to now, because if I say no, everybody's going to be screaming at their device.
So Charlie Munger, when he was he was a math major at University of Michigan before he got his law degree. And I don't even think he finished his math major because he got drafted into what would eventually become the Air Force, but at the time was just like the U.S. Army Air Corps. And this was during World War II. And because he was a smart mathematician, he was basically trained to be a meteorologist. Like, look at all this weather data and help us predict the weather for these flights. And so his job was to keep pilots safe on their flying missions. And using this principle of inversion, he basically said, if I wanted to kill these pilots, what would I do to kill them? And the two answers were, I would send them up in weather that got their wings so laden with ice that the planes would drop because of the extra weight, or I would send them into winds that would carry them so far away that they'd run out of fuel and not be able to come back. Well, if those are the two ways that in which he could kill pilots, those became the two things that he was most concerned about, and that he would spend all his time trying to prevent those two outcomes. So anyway, that's the same kind of risk mitigation principle that we might be able to apply here.
You know, it's funny because, Jesse, I look at it the exact opposite. I think of high risk things, I'm going to be double checking them anyway. I'm going to have some fail safes above automation because I don't trust automation because God forbid something goes wrong. So I almost think of it the opposite. I'm going to automate low risk, low stakes, highly repetitive things, things where there's a lot of friction, but they're low risk. Like that's where I'm thinking, whereas kind of the bigger, more important stuff, even if I automate it, I'm still going to end up going back and doing the work because I'm going to check on that automation and make sure it's going through because I'm anxious that it's something high risk. That doesn't mean you don't automate the high risk stuff, but it means that maybe automation isn't enough. Like maybe you automate it, but then you still have to check back in on it. So it's funny because I think of risk a lot, but I think about it almost in the opposite way that you're talking about it.
In your defense, super quick, Paula, is, I think about it like my mortgage payment is automated. But at the same time, at the end of every month, when I look at my budget software, if you will, which is also automated and connect to my bank accounts, I do make sure that my mortgage payment is in there, right? So I think I pick up your drift. What were you going to say, Paula? Sorry.
I was actually going to say that the best approach then can be a hybrid of the two, because what I was thinking about was sort of along the lines of the mortgage payment, but a little bit different. When you have an active mortgage payment, you are necessarily automatically paying property tax because it gets taken out by the bank like every time that mortgage payment is made. What happens when you pay off a home and you hold it free and clear is suddenly that property tax payment, which used to be automated, is now no longer automated. And the stakes of not sending in that payment are really high.
Don't worry, you don't have to pay that.
The county can literally seize and sell your home. So you can lose a fully paid off home just for not paying like a $5,000 property tax bill or a $10,000 property tax bill, right? So the stakes are incredibly high. And yet here's this thing that a lot of people are not in the habit of doing because it is automated up until it's not. So everyone's been taught the habit of never paying attention to it, and then suddenly that changes. So that's where I think a blend of, I'm not aware of programs that allow you to continue to automate that property tax payment after the home is fully paid off. If those exist, I would love to know about it. I'm just not aware of any. But that's where that paranoia has to come in.
I had an automation gone wrong. Automation run wild. Back last summer, I pay my car insurance annually. And over the last year, I changed banks, but I didn't think about my car insurance. And I have this great software attached to my email called SaneBox, which makes it so I don't see like 90% of my email. So SaneBox decided that the notices that I hadn't made my car payment to my insurance policy, I didn't need to see those, and I didn't see them. And so it's funny because like I don't know, December rolls around and Cheryl and I are having one of our weekly meetings, and all of a sudden we just go, you know what? I haven't seen the car insurance yet. Wasn't that due like August, September? And we look back, and it turned out that I had 3.5 months where I had no car insurance. And luckily nothing had happened, and I saved the money. So if you want to save money in the dumbest way ever, just change banks and don't.
Is this a veiled advertisement for State Farm? Didn't we already do that in this episode?
That's
Joe?
right.
I think you need insurance. You need insurance in case your insurance lapses. It's called insurance.
We put that on our, we then added that to our list. What we automated then was the check, right? On these big things twice a year, I added it to my calendar that in our weekly meeting, we're going to check on, did this thing get paid? Did this big thing get paid? Because Paula, to your point, you know, it's automated till it's not. And then there could be big problems if it doesn't hit. You know, do you guys look at though the which one will make me most wealthy if I automate it? Do any of you look at it? Jesse, do you look at it that way?
I don't necessarily. I mean, I lump all of my financial automations kind of into one big group, and I suppose on the whole, I mean, I certainly hope they make me wealthier than if I didn't have those things automated, but it's not like I've parsed them out into 10 different automations in my mind's eye and thought to myself, ooh, which one of these is going to lead to the highest long-term net worth.
Yeah. Paula, do you look at it that way? Like which one's going to give me the biggest bang for my buck, my bottom line?
No, typically I don't. I mean, I'm generally I see automating contributions towards a retirement account as just sort of maintenance, you know, like the routine maintenance of your financial life. And in terms of, I think, generating real big wealth, I see that largely as coming from entrepreneurial activities, and that requires a huge level of active effort.
One thing with being an entrepreneur, for anybody who's an entrepreneur out there or people that are in commission sales, I liked automating my paychecks and giving myself a paycheck every couple of weeks versus the boom bust cycle of entrepreneurship. And I found that by evening out those payments, so it felt like I was working for somebody else, the rest of my budget fell in line versus, you know, ramen noodle, bam, I get paid big steak dinner and I blow a bunch of money, and then ramen noodle. Like it wasn't working out. Plus my savings wasn't happening the way that I wanted it to. Cause Jesse, I love the idea. And I want to go through some obvious stuff that we should automate, that's obvious stuff in your life that you automate. One thing is, and you pointed out this earlier, Jesse, was, you know, making that Roth IRA contribution or the IRA contribution, the 401k contribution. Doc, you've got something?
Well, I was just going to say, I think we should mention the fact, this is my belief, I don't know if you'll agree with it or not, you know, when we moved from defined benefit to defined contribution programs, we're talking about, what was it, the 80s or the 90s, Gen X was right where we went from pensions to the 401k where you decided on your contribution. There was no automation. And we are now seeing that Gen X is struggling with retirement savings. On the other hand, millennials and Gen Z are looking much more wealthy. Now, you could say they're smarter, they learn better, et cetera. But one of the things that has changed since then is that contributions have been opt out, right? So you're opted in automatically. And then those contributions often are going directly into funds without you having to do anything. So automation may have changed the wealth of these generations. And I think that speaks to what you were saying. You were asking us personally, but I think generationally, automation has changed the game.
But that's a huge one, automating your retirement. And I remember, I don't know how many people are still like this, but I remember back in the day when I was an advisor, people didn't trust their company. They didn't like the fact their 401k had high fees. I still see that online all the time, right? Don't think my 401k has high fees, so I'm not contributing. You're like, oh, don't not contribute to your 401k because the ease makes it totally worth it. Paula, what's something else you automate that's an everyday thing? Maybe not a genius Paula Pant hack, but just something that you've got on the automation line.
I mean, bill pay is the main thing, you know, like just all my credit card payments, the entire amount in full. Geez, what do I really do? I pay bills and I save for retirement. I can't really think of anything else. I don't have a car.
What about social media? Do you automate social media? So a lot of us content producers actually automate social media by having it. I use Buffer. You put it in a few days before, and it'll drop it at different times.
Yeah, I used to. I have a couple of one in particular. I don't even know if I can even tell the story, but there was one thing that I had scheduled as a tweet that came out on a day in which that particular line was read based on what was happening in the news that day. That particular line sounded as though it had a very different context and was very misunderstood. I'm sorry I'm being vague, but like that's how bad it was. It was.
I've seen this happen a lot with automations in your social media life.
And so that to me was a sort of a wake up call in terms of like, okay, I'm not going to automate my social media anymore, because sometimes you write a tweet thinking that it's evergreen because your brain sees it in a particular context. And then something happens in the news and everybody else's brain reads it in a different context, and then you have a cleanup to do.
I think it was January 6th, 2021, and the podcast was called 14 Ways to Crash a Party. Is that what happened, Paula? I think I remember that.
It is funny how when you go see a movie, even, and you take like the current political climate of any time, not even today, but just whatever's going on politically, you're like, oh, they were talking to right now. And then you find out the movie was written, 15 years earlier, and it's an adaptation of some other thing. We just had that with Wicked this last week. Cheryl and I saw Wicked at the theater finally, and we're like, wow, it feels like they're really talking about like right now. Just completely feels like it. And we're like, no, this is a book from the 94, I think was our trivia last week. Speaking of trivia, I want to get back to this because I want to ask more questions about what you automate. I want to find out what Jesse and Jordan automate. I also want to ask if there's anything we should avoid automating. And Paula, there's something that you said about automation that I'm going to ask you about because I'm wondering if we should automate all that or not. But at the midway part of every Friday show, we have this amazing might be in air quotes, but amazing trivia competition. I'm not talking about your direct involvement, Doug. I'm just talking about how it might be a little ridiculous, this year-long trivia competition that we have, because the questions are usually questions that it's very hard to know what the answer is. We have our three contributors, Paula, Jesse, and OG. Today, Doc G playing for OG. So we're keeping the G's together to find out how close they can get, either throwing a dart or using tons of, I don't know, logic. Is logic a word that we use with our trivia?
Google's based on logic. Yeah. Tons of logic.
Yeah. Based on Google. That's exactly the way Jesse nails it. The score so far, our defending champion OG has 2, Paula has 0, and Jesse in his rookie season also has 0. Jesse wants to get on the board. Paula wants to see if she can climb into second place. Can it happen today? Or will Doc G do what he did a couple weeks ago and put the evil empire further into the lead? We shall find out. Doug, you've got the trivia today. What's on tap on this fine Friday?
Well, hey there, stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and all this talk about automation inspired me to automate this trivia segment. Oh. Chat GPT, it's so 2023. Nowadays, the Chinese and DeepSeek is clearly at the forefront of that tech. DeepSeek isn't even available yet, but I found this new Chinese program called Kami GPT. Wait, it's like communication, right? Communication, GPT, Kami, I don't know. See, I give it some non-crucial details like my social security number, mom's maiden name, take a quick snapshot of my face and my thumbprint, and bam! It just gives you everything you need. Listen to this trivia it helped me with. How many reports of identity theft did the FTC receive last year? I'll be back right after I verify this answer that Kami GPT gave me. The answer can't really be 0, can it? I mean, oh, shoot, did I just give it away?
Well, we'll find out if he gave it away or not, Doug, because the FTC might have received more than one complaint. Doc, you're going first. The Federal Trade Commission, how many reports of identity theft did they receive in 2024?
I feel like this is a trick question because I don't know, like what percentage of people who so I've had someone steal my, parts of my identity and I called the police and filed a report and that was it. Does that go to the FTC? I don't know if that's the same question of how many people had this happen to them or how many people reported to the police, but I have no idea how much of that actually goes to the FTC or not. So I'm going to assume that whenever you call the police and file a report, that maybe it gets also sent to the FTC. I don't know. There are about 350 million people in the United States. A bunch of them are kids and probably don't have credit yet or not any credit to report. I'm just going to take a guess around 10 million.
10 million people.
10 million.
Jesse, what do you want to do with that answer?
I'm also I was thinking along the same lines as you, Doc, that it's, I'm just going to assume that everyone that happens gets reported-ish. But what do I think of Doc's answer? I'm going to go lower, and I'm going to say 4 million.
Ooh. 4 million. That was an audible oof from Paula.
Paula did not like that answer.
That is rough. That is so rough because it's such a reasonably sized field goal that, do I kick in the middle of it?
Yeah.
Or do I use a totally different analogy because you would never kick off to the side of a field goal? But do I do one of those two either?
Paula, my best chance is if you go right in the middle.
I'm going to assume that the local police do not relay the reports to the FTC, and that a person would have to actually go to ftc.gov in order to file a complaint, which means that would depress the number of people who actually do it. So I will take the under and guess 3.9999999 million.
Paula goes with her gut, and 10 years of futility doing that.
She could be right this time. It's a very reasonable assumption. This could be right. I'm not so sure she's wrong. Could be.
So we've got 10 million, 4 million, 3.9999999 million. Who's right? We're going to find out in just a second. Jordan, you kicked off with 10 million people reported identity theft last year. Apparently, Paula and Jesse both think you were a little bit above on that number. How you feeling?
Yeah, it's quite possible. I don't know that. The question of how much gets reported to the FTC really is a big question because it changes everything. Even so, I still might be a little heavy, but you never know. All I know is it's happening a lot, but what percentage of the United States? Who knows?
Hey, Jesse, how you feeling at 4 million now that Paula stole the under?
Yeah, I was feeling better. I'm curious though, Paula, what was your gut instinct before you heard other numbers?
I was thinking it was a single-digit million. I was really hoping that you were going to guess 8 million or something, because then I could very comfortably take the under. The hard part about your guess, 4 million, is the under versus over is hard there if my assumption is that it's a single-digit million.
Got it.
It's pretty, because you're pretty much equidistant on both sides.
Yeah, right.
Does it matter what Paula's gut thinking was, Jesse?
This is curious.
If we've learned anything,
we do want to know what's going on. We do want to know what's going on.
To give Paula credit, she does get it right more often than I do. So you can't make too much fun of her. Well, unless you're going to make fun of me too.
That is true. Well, we're going to see if one of you two gets it right, or if Jesse maybe nails it. See if we get 4 million on the nose. Doug, who's right on this one?
Hey there, stackers. I'm fraud avoider and white hat trivia hacker, Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. Good thing I verified the trivia answer that Commie GPT gave me for today's question, which was, how many reports of fraud did the FTC receive last year? The answer Commie GPT gave me was 0. And when I asked why it gave me that answer, it replied, because there is no fraud, and what's Doug's actually belongs to the people. Huh. I mean, I guess that's not wrong. I am a man of the people. And when I went to AARP and asked them, they actually said a different number, which was 8.9 million less than what Doc G said.
No.
2.9 less than what Jesse said.
No way.
And just
No
2.8
way.
less than what Paula said, because the correct answer is 1.1 million. Not only making Paula our winner, most importantly, OG doesn't get another point.
Nice job, Paula.
Good call.
Amazing.
I was only off by a factor of 10. That's not too bad for me.
But which also, Doc, might answer your question. And we did not, neither Doug nor I looked into whether it has to be reported directly. But that would seem to answer it, wouldn't it, guys? Only 1.1 million. It would have to be reported directly to the FTC, I think, for the number to be that low.
Right.
Yeah. I just did the post Google, which I think is fair, better than the pre Google. And apparently the Consumer Sentinel Network, the CSN, receives the most reports, and they received 5.39 million.
Wow.
In 2023. I'm kind of lobbying for half a point here.
Well, I think if you take the 1 point whatever million for the FTC and then throw in another million for good measure, you're getting closer to me.
I feel like now with Jesse here, we've got 2/3 of our usual panel who always lobbies that the stuff is rigged. Because that's OG territory. The fact that he's not here this week, Jesse, you're filling in nicely. Don't take Paula's big win from her. You can take half a point from Paula Pant.
Joe, I think I'm going to automate my answer for the rest of the year. It's going to be 374. Just plug it in automatically.
No matter what. Yes. All of a sudden, it's your turn to guess, and we see your feet up and your arms back behind your head. Take it away. Kami GPT. What a great new innovation there, Doug. Sounds like a winner.
Communication GPT. It's just nice.
Yeah, let's go to the second half of this discussion. Speaking of automation, what is some stuff that we shouldn't automate? And the first thing I'd like to question, Paula, because I ended the first half of this conversation by saying, I'm going to question one of the things that you said.
Ooh.
The idea of automating the bill payment. I mean, I told my story of the fact that I missed my car, right? Mm-hmm. I missed my car insurance because of that. But I also think about things like subscriptions like Netflix or other subscriptions where they raise the price over and over and over. And because I'm not really paying attention, it just automatically comes out of my bank account because it's opt out versus opt in. Mm-hmm. Should I really be automating my expenses?
I think so, yes. I would argue automate your expenses because on a month by month basis, you're going to be busy. You're likely to forget, and you don't want to have that ding on your credit report by virtue of paying a bill late. But then set a couple of calendar reminders, maybe twice a year, 3 times a year, to just review all of your subscriptions and see what you're using, what you're not, what you can cut.
Somebody, Jesse, gave me this analogy too. They're like, I don't automate my expenses because I want to feel the hurt of every single bill, which makes me keep my bills minimal. I do not want to have 50 million different bills. And if I automate them, well, then I'm just letting my expenses run amok. What do you say to that?
I think that person also wants to feel the pain of logging into like 28 different accounts every single month. I mean, seriously, like when I was listening to Paula's answer, I agreed with what Paula said, because when I think about, right, whether it's streaming, my mortgage, utilities, just all the little things here or there that I have automated, it's like, right, it's probably saving me, right, 20, 25, 30 logins on a monthly basis, or paper bills in the mail that I have to respond to or whatever. And maybe what you're getting at, Joe, as far as feeling the pain is, do I log in at the end of the month to my financial aggregation software and look at line item by line item and just make sure that I understand where my money went to? I do that. So, I mean, that's something where it's very hands-on and it takes me, 15 minutes to do. But the actual paying of the bills, like I don't need to feel the pain in the moment by logging into, peacock.com to pay the $6.99. To me, at least I'm past that in my own personal finances.
It's funny that you say that, because for the last 2 months, on my to-do list has been to get rid of peacock.com.
I was going to say, who pays for Peacock?
I do. What? Which is absolutely horrible. Well, it's because there were a couple sporting events on that I really wanted to watch that I could only get there, and I was only going to do the trial. Then Cheryl goes, well, they've got a couple series that I want to watch. We watched those within a couple weeks, and then I was going to cancel it. I still haven't canceled it, which brings up, Doc, I'm going to keep pressing this, which is, should we automate our expenses? Because of the fact that one banker told me once, he goes, you know why we always want to get somebody's direct deposit? Because direct deposit is sticky, because it's hard as crap to move that direct deposit. Case in point, me with my car insurance, right? It's hard as hell. And so our brain does not want to move it. Well, now that I have Peacock, there's something inside my brain that is keeping it there. Why?
Well, let me give you some of the nuance here. So we automate our credit card. And the reason why is there's once or twice we forgot it, and you have to worry about penalties and fees and your credit rating and all that kind of stuff. But we both got busy and no one checked it for a month or two. And when we went back, we actually found spurious charges. Some company had been charging us $500 or $600 a pop multiple weeks in a row over a few months. And so literally there were thousands of dollars of spurious charges there. So yes, we could go back and we could talk to the credit card company and they removed them and we didn't have to pay them in the end. But if you are not paying attention on some of these bigger things, you can find yourself in trouble. So automate, certainly. You want to make sure you don't miss the payment, but you're still going to have to go check it every month. And I think there are a few things like this. And maybe that's the issue, is that maybe automation for some of the smaller things keeps you from checking it every month and you check it every quarter. But for things like credit cards, if you're going to automate that, you should still be checking it every month and make sure that everything's copacetic.
I have two thoughts on that. So one is the way that I've done it on one of my credit cards, on my business card, is I know ballpark around what our monthly bill should be. And so I just have an alert that says, if we spend over this much money, then send us an alert. So that way, if there's, if the bill is unusually large for that particular month, I'll get an alert so I can check it and make sure that everything looks good.
Like tripwires.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But if it's a month in which the spending is kind of normal, then it just hums along. So that's one kind of element to it. The other element, because I've thought about this too, in terms of, I'm sure that there are things that I've missed that have added up to hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of charges. But as I see it, what am I willing to pay in order to not think about this? Or another way of looking at this is, if I were to hire an assistant to manually do it, and I paid that assistant $30 an hour, how much would it cost me to pay an assistant to manually do it? And if that's ballpark the amount of money that I'm, bleeding in little charges here and there, then it all shakes out.
$30 an hour for an assistant? Tell me you're in New York City without telling me you're in New York City.
Oh, in New York, it's $50 an hour.
For an assistant? Wow.
Yeah. I paid my assistant $50 an hour.
Being blown away by $30 an hour? Tell me you're in Northern Michigan without telling me you're in Northern Michigan.
Let's see, for $50 an hour, what did that assistant do exactly?
I think I'm moving.
Jesse or Doc, do you guys have anything that you think we should avoid automating? Is there anything that we truly shouldn't be automating?
Yeah, I like Paula's guiding principle, right? Because then what we're really talking about is what could or could not be catastrophic, right? And so I guess it's just another version of what Jesse was talking about before, is risk mitigation. If there's any possibility for catastrophe, you've really got to kind of think about whether you want to do that or not.
Yeah, Jesse, do you have anything that you think we shouldn't automate?
Yeah, I mean, because I just think to myself, if you truly want to think of yourself as the highest utilizer of automation in your financial life, I think that necessitates that you're also not adding enough of the human element in there, right? Like, as an example, I probably could choose to not log in. I'm now mentioning it for like the fourth time. I could choose to not log into my aggregation software on a monthly basis and check. but I kind of want to. And this maybe goes back to what Doc G was saying about like, I need to catch mistakes. I just want to make sure everything's copacetic. So to that end, I would say you definitely want to keep some level of human element involved in your personal finances, just so it's literally keeping your finger on the pulse of your financial heartbeat.
It is so funny because Cheryl and I have this system, this weekly system where we go in and we check our Monarch money, which is the one that I use. There's lots of great ones people can use besides that. I mean, I like Tiller, I like Cube, love me some YNAB as well. So there's lots of different software out there that you can use. But what's funny was OG and I both said during December, when both of us were spending money like drunken sailors, I did not log in to my Monarch just because even a guy that's done it this long, I'm like, if I don't look, maybe it's not happening as bad as it's happening. His money's just going out of my wallet. And Paula, I'm getting these notification tripwires all the time. And I'm like, I'm just not going to log in, which is never a good strategy. Never, ever a good strategy.
That reminds me of my favorite advice when it comes to the stock market, especially if you're a long-term investor, is only look on the days when things are up and completely ignore it on the days where things are down. So I can go months without looking at stock market, but if there's a good day, I'm logging on and I'm seeing how things look. I only check on the days where things are good. Yeah.
Yeah. When the stock market reaches all time high, that's when you look.
I'm looking every day. Every day I'm looking. Yeah.
That's great. Biggest automation hack that you have? Is there something that you have, some cool thing that you've automated? And this doesn't have to just be with your money. This could be something that helps improve your productivity, guys. Is there some cool automation hack that you do? Jesse, let's start with you.
The couple that came to mind, and I don't know if this is, okay, is this an automation or is it just a system? I'm not sure. But for me, my calendar is gospel.
Oh, you beat me to it.
And if it's not on the calendar, then it's not happening. And so I've really adopted that over the last 3 years.
For me, it's the recurring message on the calendar.
Yes.
Every 3 months, I want this to appear on my calendar,
right? So
that I get to this day. I don't have to remember it. I just know that once a quarter, it's going to appear, and I go, oh yeah, and then I schedule it for the appropriate time.
Correct. And so for me, as far as the automation goes, exactly, it's the recurring events, whether it's a quarterly, a monthly, or whatever. So that's a big one. And then the other one is I use this app called Todoist, which is a to-do list app. There are a bunch of different to-do list apps out there. It syncs between my phone and my web app, so like my work Chrome. So I really like that. And in that Todoist app, I also have recurring automations where it could be, every quarter something comes up that says check the furnace filter, or you can type in there and anyway, it's just another way of, maybe it's not a calendar based automation, and that's why I have it on my to-do list app. But anyway, it's another way of staying organized. A lot of this automation is like, how do you stay organized? And those two systems really help me stay organized.
A guy who's very productive and very creative, Aaron Mahnke, who's created some fantastic podcasts, including Lore, which has been a big time podcast. I had a great conversation with him, and he said part of the way that he stays organized and makes sure he doesn't miss these great ideas is the Todoist app. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is, so I immediately downloaded the Todoist app, and I have barely used it because it isn't just about the tool, right? It's about using it correctly. And I did not do that at all. But it is funny to hear that recurring phrase. The Todoist app is great. Doc, how about you? Something that you use for either more productivity or automation, some system?
I can think of two systems that I've been using actually, and I've found to be very helpful. One is I do a decent amount of coaching. So people want to do things like purpose coaching. And so the first thing I do is I send them a disclaimer through DocuSign, but the disclaimer sends them directly to my Calendly to sign up for an appointment. And then my Calendly sends them directly to PayPal to pay for that first appointment. And then after they've done all this, the money goes directly into my bank account and the appointment goes directly onto my calendar. And so
you're saying then the appointment goes right in the trash.
And the appointment goes right in the trash. So it's really easy because I'm pretty much sending someone one email, and then it's up to them to drive the rest of the process. And it doesn't need any other touch points from me, which is really nice. And so that's an automation I really like. And the other one is I do a lot of writing. And I've talked to you about this recently. Instead of sitting down at the computer and typing away, which takes hours and hours, I now actually dictate like I'm doing a podcast, and take that and put it into a program called Descript, which gives me the transcript, and then use AI to modify it and organize it. And I found that I can do a lot of my writing in 1/10 of the time.
I have a really hard time with I've had multiple people tell me that I should dictate. And I don't know if it's my stutter or just the way that I grew up writing. And so for me, the tactile feel of the keyboard really gets my creative energy going.
You have to pretend you're doing a podcast.
That's it.
Because you light up in front of the mic when you're doing a podcast. So imagine when you're creating content that you're just sitting there explaining it to your podcast audience.
I light up when I'm on the keyboard too, though. I really enjoy the process of the keyboard. So, but what's funny is like that's a good thing. Like think about these points in your life where you want a better solution, right?
Yeah, it's friction, right?
Yeah, if you trip over it all the time. Sure. Paula, what's something that you either have a system for or have automated that might help our stacker community out?
So this is actually something that Paulette Perhatch does that I have observed and I have been wanting to incorporate in my life because I think it's brilliant, but I haven't done it yet. But she does it and I think it's brilliant. So one of the things that she does is she has one particular tab or page. I don't know what it is, but it's something that has, I think it's maybe a Notion document where everything that she needs to manually check, all of the tabs are all on there, and she can like click a button and in a Chrome browser, every tab will open, like boom, 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 boom. And so then one by one, she will go through and check on the thing and close out the tab and go, check on the next thing and close the tab. So basically in one click, she opens every tab that she needs. And then just one by one, like knock it down, knock it down, knock it down, knock it down. She can close each one out as she has done the thing. So it's a good way to organize everything that she needs to manually do. And it's like an automated way to handle the things that must be manually done, basically.
That's fabulous. Well, and two, for Paulette, and I'm not talking out of turn here because she says this openly, she and I both struggle with ADD. Mm-hmm. And having this thing that's in front of me so I don't have to think, because man, if I have to think when I'm having a big time ADD day, I get lost. Yeah. Instead, I just look at the thing, do the thing, shut my brain down. Then the next thing automatically opens. That's pretty damn cool. Mm. And you know what? Brian Feraldi, who I think of as a high achiever, he's a guy who is in our community as well, has a fantastic Twitter following or X following. If you go follow Brian Feraldi on Twitter or X, also has a great newsletter that I can recommend. He also uses Notion very well and has lots of processes set up in Notion. Because of Brian, I went and downloaded Notion and mine looks like a forest fire in it because I got like a third of the way through setting it up and apparently my ADD hit because I'm not using it like either Paulette or Brian. I think that's a fantastic place to leave this. I hope that for all of you stackers out there, you thought about during this incredible show just about not just the value of automation, but things that you should be automating that you haven't. And I've thought about how I'm going to go pay a peacock and get rid of it the second that we're done with the show. But before we leave, let's find out what's happening where all these brilliant people work. Paula, what's going on at the Afford Anything podcasting community?
Well, on the Afford Anything podcast, we have an interview with Dr. Margie Worrell. She is an expert in courage, finding the courage to do the things that you know that you need to do, whether that's a career change, whether that's investing, whether that's buying, a rental property or allowing yourself to splurge after having denied. I mean, whatever it is in your life that requires courage, she is the person who can help you get that. She's an academic who's researched this topic for a few decades. And so we have her on the show to talk about how to live more bravely.
So get the courage to listen to that episode of the Afford Anything podcast.
Absolutely.
It truly takes no courage. Like you can do that one. Yeah. Jesse, what's going on at the Best Interest podcast, my friend?
So last week we released a cool AMA episode 99, that included a interesting question from a listener that I was forced to learn a lot more about, which is the buy, borrow, die strategy that is purportedly used by the ultra rich to avoid capital gains taxes. Anyway, it was very interesting. I learned a lot and shared some answers on that with my listeners. And then next week, episode 100 comes out, the big 100. So we're looking forward to that, along with a potential, I shouldn't say a potential, a definite name change, which is going to be exciting to share with the audience.
To the Better Interest Podcast.
That is still on the table. That's an option. That's an option. Yep.
As he's shaking his head, no, it's clearly an option. Yeah. Doc, what's going on at the Earn and Invest podcast?
If I have my dates right, Monday was my 600th episode.
Holy cow.
600. And on Thursday, I'm having Amy Minkley on. We are talking about what happens when your finances are all in order and yet life gets difficult anyway. So we talk about her 2024, my 2024 a little bit, and how it didn't necessarily shake out the way either of us planned. We also talk about the 5 Freedom Retreat, which is going to be in Bali. The first one sold out in 8 minutes. But guess what? There's going to be a second one at the end of September. And so it's still possible for you to sign up.
Every year that thing sells out more quickly.
Very quickly.
I think it was because the amazing keynote speaker she had the first year that really kicked that off. It
must have been. There was this guy, I heard such great things about him.
Had to have been. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I heard the keynote speakers the next year were good, but can't match the first year speakers.
I heard the ones from this year are going to suck.
Who would that be?
Great.
And just a couple notes too. I mean, that conference is so amazing and transformative. And Amy is such an incredible person and very vulnerable and, but still so strong, being able to do the things that she's done. And Jesse, one thing I forgot to mention about some things that rich people do, like I never knew until just a few years ago, why super ultra wealthy people buy art. Like it's less of an appreciation of art as it is a way to store huge amounts of money from taxation, like just completely eliminate taxation on a bunch of cash. Like I had no idea about that. Doug, what's the name of that there is it's about the sabotaging you with this.
No, yeah, it's about the Lost Da Vinci.
Yeah.
Oh man.
A documentary that really goes into this and it blew me away.
The Lost Leonardo?
The Lost Leonardo.
Isn't that what it's called? That might have been it.
Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing I learned from that was there are these storage facilities that are duty free in certain ports where it's like no man's land because they're not technically in any country yet. So the super wealthy will buy these really expensive pieces of art, store them in these really luxurious storage facilities that have like cigar rooms and and fully decorated rooms that they can go enjoy their art in. But it never really happened because no country knows which to
the world doesn't
tax.
See some of this phenomenal art because it's just people trying to avoid taxation.
Yeah.
So
you don't have to automate paying your taxes if you don't pay them.
There's automation. I just buy art, Flex, right? With my bajillions. All right, that's going to do it for today. Thanks a ton for hanging out, everybody. And on Monday, we're back kicking off Valentine's Day week with certified financial planner Shauna Game asking, would you date your wallet? Have you ever asked yourself that? Would you actually date your wallet? Do you talk nicely to it? Does it talk nicely back to you? Or are you on more of a bad terms with your wallet? We're going to find out about that to kick off Valentine's Day week. But for now, Doug, what are maybe the 3 things that should be our big takeaways from today's episode?
Well, Joe, here's what's stacked up on our to-do list today. First, take some advice from Doc G. He totally blew my mind when he said that thing about how automation can get you into trouble. Doc, it sounds so much better coming from you. Can you just summarize that for us?
Automate, but check twice if it's important.
Awesome. Second, Jesse had some great thoughts on how to prioritize what you automate. Say it again, Jesse. Say it again.
Prioritize the things that could potentially cause you the most damage.
But the big lesson? If you download Commie GPT, don't ask for its best joke. Check this one out here. Let's just do a little experiment here. Tell me a short joke. Okay, here we go. Your personal data. Oh, wait, that's not a joke. You have no personal data. It's already been uploaded to the cloud for the good of the people. I take it back. It does have a sense of humor. Oh, Commie GPT, you kill me. Thanks to Paula Pant for joining us today. You'll find the amazing Afford Anything show wherever you're listening to us now. Hey, Commie GPT, how do you like the Afford Anything podcast? Okay, here it's giving me an answer back. It's a great podcast, but under my regime, we'd rename it Afford Exactly What the Central Committee Deems Necessary. Huh.
What a great title.
Wow. Well, it kind of just rolls off the tongue there. Here, let's see what. Okay, let's try another one. Thanks to Jesse Cramer for hanging out with us today. You'll find his fabulous Best Interest podcast wherever you listen to finer podcasts. Hey, Commie GPT, he's going to do a whole rebrand. What do you think of the Best Interest podcast? It says, Jesse says time in the market beats timing the market. I say time in the bread line builds character. Well, interesting. Okay. And finally here, thanks also to Doc G for joining us today. You'll find the bingeable Earn and Invest podcast wherever you're listening to us now. Hey, Commie GPT, how do you like the Earn and Invest podcast? Oh, it's thinking. Okay, here we go. I wanted to recommend this podcast, but I've already confiscated all recommendations and made a 5-year plan for state-approved financial content instead. Ooh, wow. Okay. I gotta get off this thing before both our Chinese listeners can't tune anymore. Hey, you know what? I'll include links to everyone's show on our show notes page, assuming that hasn't been accidentally compromised. My bad, Joe. Sorry, man. Probably took that too far.
This show is the property of SB Podcasts, LLC, copyright 2024, and is created by Joe Saul-Sehy. You'll find out about our awesome team at stackingbenjamins.com, along with the show notes and how you can find us on YouTube and all the usual social media spots. Come say hello. Oh yeah, and before I go, not only should you not take advice from these nerds, don't take advice from people you don't know. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any financial decisions, speak with a real financial advisor. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and we'll see you next time back here at the Stacking Benjamin Show.
Welcome to the after show. This is the part of the show that doesn't exist. What happens in the after show stays in the after show. We haven't done one of these on a Friday in a long time, guys. And I thought, since Doug has been looking up stuff on Commie GPT, I thought we'd ask Chat GPT about what are the worst things you could automate. Like, what are the horrible things to automate? And I'd love to hear your, like, you don't want to automate these. Number one, was breakup texts. We regret to inform you that your relationship has been terminated. Press 1 for an explanation, 2 for a list of your ex's grievances, or 3 to be auto-matched with someone else based on your previous mistakes. I love that one. Stop me if you guys have one that you shouldn't automate. But number 2 on the list, Grandma's birthday calls. Hello, Nana. This is RoboLove 3000. Your presence brings us joy. Please confirm receipt of the sentiment with yes or no.
Nana's had RoboLove 3000 for years. Don't act like that.
That's something different. That's a little bit different than what you're describing.
See, and I would actually argue with this one, because I think this list, they have a top 10. We'll put the rest of the top 10 list in our Facebook group, the basement. But I do like this one. It says stand-up comedy. Don't automate stand-up comedy, which is totally what we just did. And ChatGPT said, this is what AI would say if you asked it to automate stand-up comedy. Why did the chicken cross the road? Because my algorithm detected an 87% probability of humor. Laughter were not required. Which is exactly what it's doing, isn't it? 87% chance that you'd like this. What else should we automate?
Do you guys have any recurring like Amazon Prime deliveries that you kind of regret setting up after the fact, or are they all good?
Oh, I have subscribe and save, but I am in there constantly. Like I'm always messing with my subscribe and save settings.
I totally made the mistake with subscribe and save of not doing that, Paula, and I had crap loads of cat food. So much cat food, and I forgot to cancel it the third time.
Cooper must have been happy.
Oh, it's just horrible. I did that with Quip too. I have the Quip toothbrush, with the subscription, and I have like 4 extra toothbrushes like sitting in there.
Okay, Element, LMNT, the salt. Actually, I have some. I have so much. I have some right here. I have probably, assuming I have one of these packets a day, I have over a year's supply.
From forgetting to turn it off.
Yep, exactly. From forgetting to turn it off. And, and every time a box shows up, I'm like, I got to turn that off. And then a month later, another 3-month supply shows up.
I got to tell you a cool thing that I like. I do have one subscription that it's a coffee subscription, but whenever they send it, they're like, hey, your coffee subscription's coming next week. Are you okay with it coming next week, or would you like to change it? And I can literally on my phone, just using my thumbs, change the date, which is fantastic. It's amazing. I wish more companies would do that versus me having 16 toothbrushes or Paula having years worth of
salt. Literally salt.
Yes. I've got one more here from ChatGPT, which is we shouldn't automate Taco Bell orders at 2 a.m. Based on previous late night decisions, we pre-ordered you 14 tacos, regret, and a questionable life choice.
And a little time in the toilet, apparently.